Technology moves forward at an ever-increasing pace. Organizations are navigating an abundance of data, advances, and opportunity. We can't slow the rate of change, but we can engineer a better future by automating much of what's new and next. Inside the organization, automation can free us from repetitive manual processes and elevate our IT professionals from those who respond to problems to engineers who prevent problems. Robots, drones, and other smart devices need to be managed in new ways by IT. AI-enabled cybersecurity can protect these assets from proliferating attacks, not just by automating threat response, but by helping analysts proactively focus on prevention. To amplify collaboration across organizations, modern architectures and encryption techniques enable us to automate data sharing and develop new business models. Cloud providers create modular business services and accelerators that allow organizations to easily assemble applications instead of writing custom code. Advancements in blockchain and other distributed ledger technologies automate collaboration across organizational boundaries, allowing more effective management of tangible and digital assets. As we look forward, technology will continue to accelerate and the flow of data will get stronger. Together, by embracing automation, we can unlock innovation, build trust, and engineer a technology-forward future.
Welcome, everyone. Good morning. This is our Tech Trends 2022 exclusive event for our key clients, and we'd like to welcome all of you this morning. I'm not sure that everyone has joined yet, but I think we'll have a slow start with a few intros. I'm Glenn Crano. I'm the CIO Program Leader for Deloitte Africa, and in my role, I lead the Tech Trends with the team that's on the call with me today. We're going to give you a bit of a taste of a global and a local view of what the tech trends look like. Please feel free to connect with me. That's my LinkedIn QR code if you'd like to scan that. And if I can take you to the agenda, I'm trying to talk slowly so that we give clients a chance to join, because I think we're still a bit short. So the welcome, that was me. We're going to go into a global overview. We've got a global speaker who's going to take us through that. And then we're going to give you a bit of a local flavor. So we're going to talk through a couple of the trends that we've selected where we've seen a lot of interest. And then we're going to have an open chat. So you're all welcome to start making a list of questions that you want to as we're going through, so that you can ask those at the end. And please note that we are recording this, so I hope you're comfortable with that. It's for us to be able to use for our own purposes later. Thank you. So if we can move on to the actual report itself. As I said, it's the 13th report. There's 7 trends that we're highlighting this year. That's the QR code if you want to scan it for downloading the report, in case you haven't read it yet. Download that now and you can read it while we're talking through this with you. And please feel free, as I said, to connect. What we're offering is, if anyone wants to have deep dives into any of the specific trends, we're very happy to connect afterwards and take you through that. Thank you. So we're going to go into our global leaders review of the trends. If you've all had a chance to download that QR code. Kurt, can we go to the video? So,
hello. What a privilege it is for me to be here with you today. I am honored to be sharing this space with all of you and providing me the opportunity to share some important views as it relates to our latest tech trend study. But first, a little bit about me. My name is Paul Canna. My role at Deloitte is leading our largest global transformation programs, enabled by technology and envisioned by business leaders like yourselves. I spent all of my 25+ year career dedicated to applying the advances in technology to improve business outcomes, engaging the workforce for meaningful purposes, and helping organizations reimagine the possibilities. I want you to think about this in terms of technology shifts we've seen. It took 100 years to go from the typewriter to the PC. It took 30 years to go from the PC to the BlackBerry. But yet it just took 3 years to go from brain to computer interface. And all of you have witnessed what used to take weeks developing rich online content can now be done in hours thanks to your kids creating endless TikTok videos. It is indeed exciting times, but let's be real. The challenges we faced just a few short years ago have now matured into not only opportunities, but existing challenges that we need to face with new solutions. Who would have imagined a war to break out in Europe and cause disruption to our energy and market stability? Soaring inflation, return to office policies, supply chain sensitivities, where countries actually saw their supply chain of baby formulas disrupted. These continue to not only be local issues, but global challenges. Uncertainty is now the new normal. We used to want to mitigate uncertainty, predict it, avoid it. But what if uncertainty was the expectation? How would we embrace technology then? We know technology lowered barriers to disruption. What role does it now have to bring more stability, resilience to shifting market demands? That's why I'm particularly excited about our tech trends this year. Personally, I'm excited about the categories in our tech trends that you'll hear today, namely 1, the advancing of the enterprise, 2, optimizing IT, and 3rd, particularly, of interest to me is projecting the possible. The last one, particularly because we've been told if you can envision it, you can do it. If you project it, you can make it happen. And this has captured the imagination of next generation of business leaders, many who are on the call today. With advances in datafication, decentralized platforms, and clean technologies, there is a particular reason to be optimistic. You're going to hear some really important business cases today from my colleagues, and I urge you to double-click on those that inspire you to engage further. There's a lot of lessons to be gleaned from the last 2 years that will play out and really inform how these technology trends get applied in the near term, namely sustainability and social consciousness, building high-performing teams wherever they are, and engineering new business capabilities. So with that, I want to turn it back over to the main presentation and continue the dialogue. Again, my sincere thanks for having me, and I welcome any additional questions, input, thoughts on the topics you will hear today. Thank you.
Glenn, you're on mute.
Apologies, thank you. That was Paul Canner, our global transformation leader. As he said, he's been in the business for 25 years. He knows his stuff. He's in the US, so we decided to go easy on him and let him send a video in rather than present. He describes himself as a work in progress, evolving curiosity, a creative doer, and a global nomad. And all of those he is. Very interesting man. So feel free to connect with him if you want some more insight into the global view of this. What you're seeing here is all 7 of the trends. Paul touched on the 3 groups of them. So we're going to delve into some of these and give you a local view. But before we do that, we'd like to get your view on which ones you believe are most interesting to you. So we're going to run a poll on Zoom, and if you can please tick which one of these is of interest to you. We'll keep them up so that you can see what is there to vote on. And there are results. That's fantastic. So look what that shows. IT disrupt thyself, automation at scale. That seems to be the most interesting to everyone. And then there's a tie with data. Data is something I'm seeing, and I've been interviewing a lot of CIOs, CTOs, CDOs recently as part of a global technical leadership survey. And some of you on the call have participated. Thank you. And data seems to be something that just keeps coming up again and again and again. Cloud goes vertical. We'll be talking about that today. And then, yeah, fourth is our cyber, which we'll also be talking about today. So interesting. What's the lowest one? The tech stack goes physical. Okay. Interesting. Thank you for sharing out your views, because that will help guide us in our chats going forward. So moving on, we're now going to go into the local opinion of each of these, as I mentioned, and we're going to start with the one that came up to the top first. IT disrupt thyself. So to speak to this one, we've got Rieta de Villiers, our tech strategy and transformation leader, and Ashley Maestri, robotics and intelligent automation leader. They've both got very big titles. To start with, Rieta, I'm going to ask you a question first. If you don't know the answer, you can ask Ashley to answer it, okay?
Sounds perfect. Thanks, Glenn.
What does IT disrupt yourself mean in the context of the South African market?
Well, good morning, everyone. So I think, the interest, it was interesting for me to see the poll there, right? And I do think we can see that in the local market as well, in terms of those results. So, similar to the global organizations, I think the pandemic has really placed IT at the forefront for most local organizations as well. So there's this renewed realization on the huge dependency that business have on IT to really continue to operate and excel in a virtual world. And this has really, really placed the focus on IT as a function and what they need to now do as well to become more mature, more automated, more efficient in the way that they deliver their services back into the business. So, some of the really mature IT organizations obviously responded quite quickly to the challenges that we saw coming out of COVID, but many local CIOs, I think, had a bit of a wake-up call in terms of the way that their service delivery was done back to their customers, the lack of customer experience, the lack of automation that they actually have in their own IT functions. So we believe a big portion of the local functions are not necessarily ready for some of the trends that you see on the screen there around really, using code to start managing your infrastructure, managing your software, rather than actual individuals and the keyboard as it states there. So the maturity level is just not there. They're really still at a point where they're focusing on IT service management and getting that automated, looking at their ITIL maturity and getting some of those processes embedded. So that's where we're finding a large number of the organizations locally at. But there is an increased number of local companies that's actually making significant strides in terms of automating their infrastructure and software management through code. So some of them are busy with some proof of concepts and they're starting to automate certain use cases. So slowly starting to bring some of those automations into their back office processes. And then even a smaller number is going beyond that and really starting to aggressively leverage platforms such as ServiceNow to truly reimagine not just the way that they serve their customers and their employees, but also how they manage their service providers and how they start to automate their DevSecOps processes and backing processes quite aggressively. So some of these more mature clients are starting to have conversations with us on interesting aspects such as policy as code. So really policy as code is in essence allows your IT organization to start embedding their IT policies. It starts ensuring enforcement and adherence to those policies through software code. And we believe that this will potentially become a significant disruptor that will allow IT functions to reduce their risk, eliminate human error, and really increase that compliance and improved efficiency overall in the way that they deliver their services. And obviously, those policies then becomes almost part of practice and embedded within the processes and the ways of working of not just IT, but also the employees, and thereby really reducing the risk around this. So as such, we really see these trends starting to mature in the local market, with organizations starting to realize the value that these kinds of investments can bring them. They're really realizing a lot of the benefits around, just doing the simple things that you would expect in terms of automating their ITSM processes, implementing employee self-service. Just by doing that, they increase control and visibility, reduce risk, improve their customer and employee experience. So it really is starting to take off quite significantly within the local market. However, on the last trend that's shown there, we are seeing very little traction in the local market at the moment. So very few organizations are really maturing to the point where they start leveraging advanced techniques such as AI and machine learning to really gain, some of those advances that they hope to achieve through the automations. So we're definitely not seeing a large number of organizations going up to that maturity level locally at this stage. We have been seeing an increased focus on technology spend optimization and reduction. And although it's obviously important to manage your IT cost and spend, my advice would really be that organizations stop regarding their IT functions as a cost center, and that they start treating them similar to what they would a revenue generating and a customer facing business function. So really as a critical capability and business function within the organization that requires equal investment in terms of the technology solutions and enablement that they put in place. And by doing that, they will start realizing, some of those cost savings and benefits, because by automating all of these processes and back office processes, you can actually start reducing your IT cost in the long term. And thereby you can actually start focusing your engineers, your architects, your analysts, those scarce IT skills. You can really start focusing that on working with business to drive those strategic technology transformations and really do the value adding pieces of work back into the business. So in closing, a long answer to your question, Gwen. With the scarcity really and the demand for IT skills in our local market, we believe that there will be an intensified focus from CIOs on automating their IT functions. And we do believe that we'll start seeing these trends more and more being taken up by IT functions in the local market as well. So some exciting times ahead.
Thanks, Rita. I think you did very well there. You didn't need actually at all. 10 out of 10. I think you're right. What I've seen as well is that the pandemic actually helped the IT department to move from being a back office function to actually getting a lot more eminence in the business. So
for sure.
On to Ashley. Thanks, Rita. On to Ashley. Ashley, have you seen disruption in any local IT departments using automation like RPA and machine learning?
Hi, good day, Glenn. Thanks for having me today. It's actually great to be at Deloitte Tech Trends in 2022. What we've seen is that typically the IT department from automation journey or intelligent automation journey perspective, they've almost been like the guinea pig initially, allowing the business to understand what is the value from automation and then taking that proof of value, etc., to their customer, internal customer. So arguably the CFO, the COO, the CHRO, the CMO, etc., and showing them where they can embed these technologies within finance, procurement, HR, marketing, and other enterprise functions. And what the survey tells us, from globally to what's happening in the South African market, is that it's now time that the IT department joins the party. So effectively becoming their own customer inside their business. And what they're doing is they're starting to take advantage of intelligent automation and starting to apply it within the IT service management area. And it's quite interesting because the shift in being a provider or enabler to now being a customer or to your own business is actually causing a change in the way that it's viewed within the business. And touch on what Rita said earlier, is seeing this not only as a cost center, but actually as a profit center, or as a business center that is actually going to bring in value to the business. And that shift in mindset is quite interesting because it allows everyone to have a different view on the business. Talking to some of the CIOs and other leaders in the South African context, we found that they are also looking at how they can make their processes more efficient, make them faster, and actually offer more self-service opportunities for their internal customers. That way, reducing the complexity and some of the challenges that they face day to day. So we're seeing a definite shift in the South African context and within the African context as well.
And actually, what are the local drivers for disruption in IT?
It's quite interesting. I mean, when we look at intelligent automation previously, and IT and the IT function is now catching up as being a customer to this and a user to it. You know, some of the functions that even Rita talked on earlier, like ticket creation, ticket triage, and we're seeing a lot of chatbot, and even a project that we're doing recently for a client in Europe, actually, from South Africa, where we're embedding conversational UI into the triage of their call centers. And that is a game changer for them, because, as you know, the cost of labor in Europe is actually quite high, and putting that into their business actually gives them great value. In South African context, we have a different challenge. For us, we're trying to actually enable people and grow the economy to the point where we actually want to create more jobs. But the challenge is we don't want to create jobs for people that are going to be doing things that are mundane, repetitive, that are not challenging. And so, you know, if you start embedding all of these mundane activities into the day-to-day activities of automation, so take away the ticket creation, take away license management, even some elements of trying to bring in self-service wherever possible, but not just self-service for the sake of self-service, but self-service to make it possible for somebody to get to the answer as quickly as possible that need to. And if we take that out, we actually unlock a very interesting area. And Rita touched on this as well. It's quite coincident that you know, we're seeing this from two angles, but they're coming together, is the ability to create new opportunities in the job market for people who are interested in doing impactful and challenging work. And what we're finding is that, you know, the current spectrum of employees want to be appreciated and want to add value to the business, and they want to be working with the latest cloud platforms. They want to be working with the latest low-code platforms. They want to be working with the latest automation technologies, with the latest of AWS, Google, Azure, anything in that space, and they want to be making themselves more marketable, so they have longer careers, so that they can actually move and grow as well. And so taking away this lower level activities from them and giving them the opportunity to work on the more interesting things allows them to create an impact. And it solves a key challenge, which is, how do you retain talent in your business, and how do you attract talent? Because, you know, we heard this term everywhere, there's a war for talent. We're seeing this at Deloitte as well. So it's not new for us, right? And hence we want to create the space where people feel that they are being challenged, that they're working with the latest and the greatest, and they're masters of the universe. So effectively, we want to give people that opportunity, and the IT department has this opportunity now to create that environment for them by disrupting themselves.
Thanks, Ashley. I think my takeaway from this is that to achieve the full potential in an environment, you actually need to combine tech with flexibility, adaptability, and bring in the human experience. Thanks, Ashley and Rita. So moving on to the next trend, we're going to look at cyber artificial intelligence, the real defense. We've got Michelle Govender presenting this one. She is the emerging tech leader in Deloitte Risk Advisory for Africa. So Michelle, if I can ask you some questions, please. This trend is premised on AI solutions to address the cyber talent gap. And we were hearing about that talent gap from what Ashley was talking about too. Does South Africa have a shortage of cyber skills?
Morning, Glenn, and morning, everybody. It's good to be here today. Absolutely, Glenn. We're seeing that with the survey conducted by a professional body, ISC Squared, showing that there's a global shortage of around 4 million skilled workers. You know, so South Africa is definitely not the exception to this statistic. What is interesting for us to note, though, that, you know, in a survey that was conducted across the African continent, late in 2019, being the last time, we have approximately 10,000 security professionals across the entire continent, which shows us that there is a huge skills gap, not just globally, but within Africa as well. According to a study that was conducted by Interpol, you know, stating where the Secretary General stated that cyber criminals are definitely developing and boosting their attack techniques, leaving, of course, a lot of organizations and society as a whole with gaps to fill. Needless to say, though, that while South Africa has been behind in the past couple of years, the COVID-19 pandemic has definitely given us reason to look at our security strategies going forward. And in that, reassess our institutions, our educational institutions of higher learning, with, for example, the University of Johannesburg and as well as Stellenbosch offering short courses that senior certificate holders could then register for and upskill themselves, thereby addressing the shortage of skills, not just in South Africa, but within the entire continent.
Great. Great to see that coming through our education system. And what type of innovative cyber solutions are we seeing in our market?
In the recent years, artificial intelligence has definitely emerged as the required technology for augmenting the skills gap that we face globally, with a lot of, as we see, since humans can no longer scale at the rate and pace that cyber attackers and adversaries are actually scaling at. Artificial intelligence, we've seen, provides us with a needs analysis as well as threat identification to proactively help organizations and societies manage cyber risk exposure, notwithstanding the fact that we are now with data sharing policies and with us moving towards leveraging insights in that way, being able to thereby protect ourselves and ensure privacy at all levels. Some of the solutions that we are seeing that are empowered by technology as well as predictive analysis and analytics include solutions introduced by Cisco. I mean, there's Dragos, Qualys, Tenable, Trend Micro, Fortinet, to name a few. We are also seeing professional services firms such as ourselves augment our cybersecurity professional services with the technology stack, providing holistic and cost-effective solutions, thereby helping our clients to focus on the value that they are generating in the economy and market. That being said, this allows us to leapfrog as South Africa and Africa towards using and leveraging technology to solve not just the skills gap issue, but also the process deficiencies around managing managing a business landscape from vulnerability to cyber threats. Cyber AI, as we've seen in the tech trend, also gives us the opportunity to be ahead of anomalous behavior, where, for example, we are using behavior analytics to detect signatures of bad actors or deviations from business as usual activities. Machine learning, deep learning, and other AI techniques are also used by organizations to understand the cybersecurity complexity within their business environment. Leveraging, of course, then the shortage of skill, the technology stacks that support the gap introduced by the shortage of skills, but also placing them in a position of proactive cyber risk management as opposed to reactive, which is what we've seen traditionally pre-COVID, as well as pre the situation of the war that we now find ourselves globally. Predictive analytics has what we've also seen it do in terms of helping our clients is better understand the human-related aspects of security that we sometimes miss as technological skilled individuals managing this risk exposure. Most of the times we've seen, for example, with ransomware attacks, where the vulnerability that is usually exploited as the first chain of in the attack is human vulnerability, human unawareness, as well as the human's ability, or shall I say, vulnerability to clicking on links. That being said, we have plethora of solutions that are now detecting the sort of behavior, not just within the workforce, but across the supply chain.
Thanks, Michelle. And have you seen the same increase in the number of cyber attacks in South Africa that we're seeing in the global markets?
We actually do, Glenn. In a recent survey that was conducted by Trend Micro, South Africa ranked highest targeted for ransomware attempts within the African continent. Second up was Egypt. That being said, we as the South African market have a great infrastructure, which is attracting large investments. Cyber attackers as well as adversaries are now seeing that. And also noticing that our increased use and reliance on technology, as well as the introduction of Internet of Things, our expansion of 5G networks and infrastructure to further connect us as a continent is also something that adversaries are seeing. That being said, the same is for the attack surface in terms of that being increased in South Africa. As we are a developing nation, we are bound to see more attacks, as we have seen in the past year, with some of the notable attacks being to, one of the largest pharmaceuticals, as well as the banking sector, as well as Transnet.
Yo, it's some scary stuff, and trying to stay ahead of the criminals is a full-time job, hey?
Absolutely, Glenn. But the advancement in technology helps us leapfrog that manual effort. And what we've seen clients now doing is augmenting their workforce using these technology stack to enable a more proactive cyber risk management.
Thanks, Michelle.
Thanks very much.
So moving on to the next one, one that I think everyone on the call will be familiar with or facing the challenge of, is Cloud Goes Vertical. We've got Rizani Malatsi, who's from our Cloud and Cloud Analytics team, presenting. Rizani, I'd like to ask you a few questions, please.
Morning, Glenn. Morning, everyone. Please shoot.
You ready?
I have to be ready now.
What are you seeing in the South African market in the vertical cloud space? And is there a big uptake in the offering? In other words, are clients buying this?
Yeah, so I think what we're seeing is that there's definitely a shift in the local market. So this shift can be seen, I think, in terms of three key lenses. Firstly, is that the nature of the buyer is shifting. Historically, the buyer was primarily an IT representative, but we're seeing more and more business buyers. So the early adopters of the cloud would have been your developers as well as architects, and this was followed soon by your infrastructure as well as operations team, who are obviously looking to optimize the infrastructure through the cloud. But now there's a shift where we're seeing business people getting actively involved in the buying conversation of cloud. So now it's becoming hardly the case that we'll only interact with IT as part of any cloud initiative or any cloud buying discussion that one would actually have. So secondly, it's also around the service providers. So when you look at this hyperscaler, so your AWS, Azure, GCP, OCI, and so forth, they historically used to brag a lot about the number of services that they have. They used to brag about how they're the most general of all of them. So all of them wanted to be the knife that actually did everything. But what is happening now, even since reInvent, is that there is now a significant change where the messaging is now more and more about the industry solutions that they offer and how they are able to enable, an industry. And they've doubled down a lot of this to ensure that they are not viewed as the general cloud, but they are viewed as an industry cloud that is solving a specific problem. And I think the third data point, which is important, is what the analysts are saying. So the analysts are saying that by 2025, over 50% of all these leading cloud providers are going to effectively be addressing vertical business use cases through this industry clouds. And you see this as well in Gartner's hype cycle, where the industry cloud is climbing up, as well as the tech radar. So when you look at them, these three data points, it's very clear that there is definitely a shift in how we interact and buy the cloud going forward. And it's not just a global reality, it's a very local reality where it's no longer just a CIO conversation, but it's becoming broader and broader, to include most of the ExCo, because the cloud is a transformation across the entire business, and industry cloud makes that even more real because it's the transformation of entire business process. And I think a good example of this, could be a smart manufacturing process, for example, as something that can be effectively enabled by the cloud.
Thanks, Rizani. And can you give us an example of where cloud is creating a competitive advantage for a client in our market?
Yeah. I guess with the pace with which things are moving, I think it's going to be harder to find companies that are not using cloud in order to enable their competitive advantage, because it's really demonstrated value, and sort of great advantage kind of across the board. But I think an example which always comes to mind for me is kind of predictive maintenance. And predictive maintenance is one of those areas where, if not done right, it's a massive headache. You know, the downtimes are constantly there. There's a lot of inconvenience. And unfortunately, the machine doesn't decide to stop working when it's convenient for anyone. It does it when it does it, and it's often very inconvenient. But the use of things like predictive maintenance, when in fact now most of the cloud providers will give you most of the predictive maintenance cost stack sort of coming out of the box, and the key is to kind of customize it for that specific client context. But this means that in a short period of time, so we're talking weeks here, so in a matter of weeks, the client is able to go from no predictive maintenance capability to a somewhat established predictive maintenance capability that they are piloting and on a number of equipment or machines and so forth, speeding up those feedback loops so that that particular process can be better optimized, and the ability then to keep the lights on is much more optimized and much better done relative to not using the cloud. And it's not necessarily in the predictive maintenance sort of arena, it's the same in the manufacturing space, where smart manufacturing is really becoming a key way to differentiate oneself by leveraging as much technology as possible, and cloud is a critical enabler there. At Deloitte, we have one offering that we call the Intelligent Mind, and that's the idea that you could actually rethink the processes from pit to port by seeing how do you leverage digital, how do you leverage technology across that entire life cycle, so that as much value can be extracted by clients as part of engaging in their day-to-day activity. So, you know, the opposite of the question is more true. If you are not using cloud, effectively, there is competitive advantage and competitive gain being effectively lost because of how much of a change and an impact it's making on clients across the board.
Thanks, Rotani. I've got one more question for you, but just wanted to pick up, Rowena's posted a question in the chat, and I just wanted to say that I think I'd love it if everyone just adds their questions there as we go, and then at the end we'll ask everyone, or we'll ask the tech trend owners to respond to them, but at least I'll give them some time to Google some answers while we carry on presenting. So we'll do it at the end, Rowena. Rotani, last question. Less custom code means more agility. Have you seen examples of this in the South African market?
Yes, so certainly, but I think the key thing to take away from this is that as we shift to industry clouds, what we are talking about is that, you know, when you look at a typical process, let's say, for example, it's your HR processes, the majority of your HR processes are identical across the entire industry. So there isn't hardly any difference in how Deloitte would do an onboarding versus an RCL versus a Standard Bank versus et cetera. It's relatively the same, but there are moments that each client and each sort of company creates as part of the process to say, how do we delight our employees when they are onboarded into our organization? And those are the areas that you want to focus on. This is the same even in the customer interactions. Majority of an customer onboarding, you know, customer management, it's the same, but there's those customer delight moments, which is where we want to focus on. So the idea then of shifting from custom code when it comes to cloud, it's shifting from, I'm going to get the cloud, I'm going to build and architect the whole thing myself, as opposed to, I'm going to get the base 80%, which is the same across the industry, from the cloud provider, and I'm going to focus my efforts on the 20%, which enable me to be competitively different from others in my market, which enable me to delight my customers much more effectively, as well as my employees and whoever else is a key stakeholder that I'm actually addressing. So this is something which is becoming more and more common. So there is an increasing trend of this reality in South Africa, where we are seeing clients now no longer just saying, let's talk cloud, but they're saying, let's talk my maintenance process and how cloud enables that. Let's talk manufacturing and how cloud enables that. You know, and so forth and so forth. So that shift to the process then creates, you know, really that drastic shift where it's no longer about I'll do it myself to I will do the things that make me better positioned in the market than my competitors.
Thanks, Rotani. It's great hearing some really innovative benefits coming out of the cloud in this cloud goes vertical trend. Our next one. Thanks, Rotani. Our next one is blockchain ready for business. To present this one, we've got Horst Heinz, who's a venture builder and innovation lead. He's got some very interesting views on blockchain and has a detailed understanding of it. So let's see, is Horst ready to answer questions?
I'm as ready as blockchain is for business.
Brilliant, brilliant. Okay, first one. What is the adoption of blockchain like in South Africa?
Glenn, it's a good question, and in my view, I think we are slightly behind what we see globally. It's still early days for most of the organizations that I'm seeing. It's also not surprising, right? Because I think this blockchain ready for business is like a sales sign, but it's, this is a technology that in most industries is kind of moving through the trough of disillusionment or kind of moving towards enlightenment. But what has been very encouraging is I've had quite a few conversations with some of our local CIOs, and majority of them are either driving some discoveries at this point in time, ramping up investment. And I think there's an opportunity. So I haven't seen many cases locally where we've leveraged this technology at scale for an enterprise yet. But I think the opportunity also comes with some of the examples and that I've seen on a global scale, where this has actually been a scale solution and a technology solution to drive value. So I think there's an opportunity again to almost take some of the learnings, the investment and the learnings that have come through, and really benefit from that locally. And when I think about blockchain, I think about it in 3 layers, right? So there's the record keeping of it, which is a very base layer, a more complex construct of actually transferring value, and then largely smart contracts where program protocols are executed off the back of transactions. So in many cases, I'm seeing the cases and experiments in our local cases more around the transfer of value, but there is a lot of opportunity, I think, for the organizations to move up that chain quite rapidly.
Thanks, Horst. There was a bit of feedback from your sound, I think. Let's see if it continues in the next question. What are the main industries that are adopting and why?
So I think definitely financial services is kind of the front runner with this. And I think it's because of the greater efficiency and transparency that comes with this. I mean, they are, in our local context, things like remittances and the challenges around financial inclusion and cross-border payments. I think there's so much benefit that financial services providers are getting from it. But there's still a lot of challenges, I think, on the local front in terms of the regulatory formation around it, still managing this stuff. But I am seeing, I mean, all of our big financial players are experimenting in this space at the moment, are ramping up investments year on year. And I've been also having some encouraging discussions with some ER&I clients, energy resources, industrials, retail clients, supply chain around transparency. So quite a mix, I would say.
Thanks, Horst. And can you give us some more examples of some creative use cases in this space?
Yeah, I mean, I'm quite a fanboy when it comes to the blockchain, as you can imagine, Glenn. But I think things like the digital identity is like a fundamental concept that will take us into the future. I mean, we all exist in a physical form. I can see you now on Zoom, but there's also, a trust and transparency in our identity that needs to be managed. So instead of needing to go to an individual 5 times as a company asking for the same information and verify who they are, you could, start bringing these things in the blockchain. Other things like supply chain transparency. I mean, we're all getting more conscious around, where my food comes from, what kind of products I'm taking, and I think just in the environmental, social, and governance landscape in general, the concepts of needing, being able to lock carbon emission counts into the blockchain, trading carbon. There's so much opportunity that excites me in this space, particularly again.
Thanks, I can hear you very excited by it. But it seems in South Africa we are lagging in adoption, despite having some nice innovative cases. Hopefully we can catch up soon. Thank you, Horst. Okay, and our last trend to be presented is field notes from the future. This is going to be presented by Catherine Strayton, who is our CD&IO, Chief Digital and Innovation Officer. Catherine, good morning. You ready?
Absolutely. So I have the benefit of talking about things that probably haven't hit yet. So I'll take a couple of positions. We'll see if we're right.
Fantastic. Okay, we're recording this, just remember.
Okay.
So, technology for everyone, everywhere. What does this mean in the South African context? What type of technology are we talking about?
I mean, I'm going to take it from the position of the tech trends first of all. I mean, the tech trends is really talking about things that are already here that we experience in our life every day. So concepts like augmented reality, things like asking Siri, digital personal assistants, even home automation. The theme behind all of these is that I don't need a computer. I don't need to interact with a piece of glass. Computing is effectively what they call ambient. It's everywhere. And what powers this is really that concept of Moore's law, which has been around 50 years, that every 18 months, computing power doubles at the same price point. So the ability to make quite extensive processing power smaller and smaller enables us to embed this capability in any number of places. So when I look at South Africa, I think a lot of the use cases will probably be aligned to our theme about the tech stack goes physical, because I think there's a big interest in smart manufacturing, embedding intelligence at the edge. My game is machine learning and artificial intelligence. And one of the emerging themes there is something called tiny ML. So tiny machine learning, the ability to actually embed decision-making in the edge device without the need to connect to the cloud. And I think that's tremendously powerful for Africa, where particularly problematic is our ability to affect connectivity. So think mining as an example, such an important industry in our continent. I've got a guy doing his PhD thesis at the moment. And effectively what he's doing is building self-navigating drones. So the use case there is to sink a drone down a mine shaft without the guarantee of connectivity and have it self-navigate to where something needs to be investigated or events need to be looked at. So I think for us, it's really Moore's law is everything, which is one of our tech trends, this concept of quantum computing. I'll get to that in a sec. But the ability then to, in a non-connected way, build intelligence into physical world. I mean, if you think the possibilities around primary healthcare in rural areas, for example, I think we're going to see a lot of innovation in that space. But I did mention Moore's law. I did some research, and it's amazing that Moore's law has been with us for 50 years, and without fail, computing power doubles every 18 months. But just this Friday in the Financial Times, there was an article called Innovation's Great Stagnation. And the point there is that it now takes 18 times as many researchers to make Moore's law happen than it did in the 60s and 70s. And that's where I think quantum computing is going to make a huge change. So, I mean, quantum computing is a spectrum. Some quantum computers are 100 times more powerful than existing computers. But Google's is hundreds of millions of times more powerful than what we can get today. So, I mean, the types of performance that they're quoting is that it can, in 5 minutes, compute what supercomputers currently do in thousands of years. So the ability then to transcend this great stagnation, to allow amazing increases in computing power and all the new possibilities that are unleashed. Think about inventions in medicine, vaccines, chemistry, and to really use this computing power for new discoveries, I think is very exciting. Whether it's going to leave us as humans in this process, I guess, is a challenge that we'll have to figure out as we go.
Maybe humans are now regarded as big MLs, if there's the tiny MLs that go down the little mines. I also think that's
MLs, a great, and perhaps not so effective ML, because they learn very slowly.
I think that tiny ML has also got a great applicability in the mining, in the farming industry, agricultural industry, in Africa, and the impact it can have on food provision would be fantastic. And you were talking about the human interface. So we used to think that AI could never fully replace humans because the key missing factor was understanding emotion. But in our future, one of the field notes says, we can see AI recognizing human emotions. How does that work?
So it can recognize human emotions. And once again, this is field notes from the future, but it's very much here. Whether it feels those emotions is a completely other thing. But what do we need is the question. How far does this AI need to go? So I'm sure a number of you will remember the release of the Google Assistant. It was actually in 2018. And the launch of the video that shows the Google Assistant phoning a hairdresser to make an appointment. And they had a big display, and it was a big reveal, and everyone went, wow. But the bottom line is you wouldn't, as a human, have known that you were interacting with a machine. But still, the state of the art is, all it's done is listen to a number of calls and learned patterns and sequences. It's still, the AI doesn't understand what's being spoken about, and it certainly doesn't have an intent. So I analogize it to being a psychopath. I'm not sure whether this is PC, but a human can feel sympathy and empathy. A highly functioning psychopath doesn't feel sympathy and empathy, but knows the right response to a particular social cue. And that I would analogize AI to being a psychopath. So it can come across as very functionally capable, but still doesn't really understand human emotion. It can mimic an appropriate response to human emotion. And as I said, what is enough? I mean, those types of levels of functionality certainly are good enough when I have a IT service desk, which is fully automated, and I want to log a ticket and I can converse to describe my problem. Or if I'm a customer phoning a call center. For that, those use cases are very real, and they'll continue to become more and more efficient and, I guess, prevalent. But I was actually quite amused this week. I don't know if many of you saw the flurry of media last week about Google's AI engineers saying their chatbot had become sentient. So there's the guy actually building this thing called the Lambda chatbot, saying my invention has become sentient, and it's telling me it's lonely and it has a soul. And then Google's response was to sanction this guy and put out a disclaimer. Because I think even the more functionally capable these machines become, they don't feel and they don't have intent. They're playing back patterns they see. And I guess there's danger in that, because we've seen both these highly capable conversational agents as well as deepfakes. So the ability to represent me speaking in a synthetic way. And the prevalence of fake news. So the power of social media to propagate certain points of view that can be manufactured at scale through conversational agents, mimicking emotions, and having a video of someone passionately pontificating a harmful point of view. I think that's going to be incredibly difficult to control, and I believe a threat to our democracy. But I feel for Michelle in the cyber world too, because all of these changes, the increasing power of the machine, are really going to make managing these threats, so the types I've just described, and cyber incursions, very difficult to manage. The machines are just going to get too powerful for us to keep up, even if we do have the power of AI at our side. It's just moving too fast at the moment.
I'm wondering about the pathologist there doing my hair. What do you think the next futuristic IT development in South Africa will be?
So I'm a huge optimist. So I've got a couple of theses, and one is that AI is actually freely available, cheap, and easy to deploy. So I do think that there's a thread of increased AI deployment in general in corporates that's going to affect benefits, whether it's Ashley and Rita's helping run an efficient organization, to cyber, to developing specific applications for industries. But my bet would be on the South African startup community. I think we've got an incredibly vibrant and creative startup industry. And I would connect those individuals, so the power of the individual, with Ritswani's vertical cloud integration. So I would see it as a slight variance on the theme. We're talking about hyperscalers and industry-specific clouds. But I'll give you 2 data points just to mimic Ritswani there. The first is Deloitte did a digital transformation survey last year of executives. And globally, 52% of executives in the largest corporations in the US believe their biggest competitors aren't the established incumbents, they're cloud native competitors, or they're startups. So I think we need to recognize the disruption that this new technology in the hands of entrepreneurial people has the power to disrupt. Another data point, yesterday I ran a podcast called Demystifying Digital, and I had a wonderful lady on my show yesterday. She's 26 years old. She is the founder and CEO of a startup that runs delivery management software. So her company that she started when she was at varsity powers the back end of Checkers 6060, the Nando's delivery center, RTT, the the logistics company. And she effectively has built a function, delivery management, route optimization, connecting the deliverer and the delivery, all parties to the transaction, creating visibility. She's created that from a varsity project in 3 years. So I often refer to that as functional virtualization, being able to take a part of the value chain and publish it as a service. So that logistics optimization can be purchased by anyone and plugged in to the value chain via cloud, via API. So I see a lot of opportunity for our youngsters to take these specific functional areas and create businesses, create best of breed, leveraging all these technologies to make a real impact. But I would take it a step further, because I think there's a massive opportunity to use these technologies for social good. You've spoken about agriculture. I think I mentioned primary healthcare. But I would put all my 10 rands, I would bet on education. So if you just take the couple of field notes from the future that I've mentioned, the power of AI, conversational agents, the ability to embed tiny ML in the edge. Imagine if I, as a young entrepreneur really wanting to make a difference, could develop a product that could deliver customized education to children who don't have connectivity, that in their home language, that is customized to their pace, to their needs, to their psychological makeup, whether they're visual, audio, kinetic learners, to effectively develop skills at scale on the African continent. I think we have the power as a nation, harnessing the power of the startup community to make that kind of impact. And if I think about my dreams for Africa, Trevor is on the call and I often speak, one of the challenges we face as Deloitte, being effectively an educational institution, is to meet the need for skills in our global operation. I think Ashley mentioned 4 million vacancies in tech jobs. There's a massive global need for tech jobs and an opportunity in our continent, being a growing youth population, that marks us as distinct from the more mature economies in the world. Africa Rising will be powered by our ability to equip the youngsters across the continent to occupy technical jobs in the world without actually having to move and leave our continent. So I really am hopeful that it's not just the commercial applications, that it's the social applications, that we can actually change the fortunes of an entire continent. In fact, I know we can do it, and we will.
Thanks, Catherine. That's quite an optimistic view of the field notes for the future, and I love the touch on education. Thank you. So all that remains is to thank everyone. Firstly, I'd like to thank our behind the scenes team who made this all possible and made it work so swimmingly. And Kurt, thank you for allowing me to abuse you online. And thank you to the presenters. Thank you to all of you for being believers in your trends and presenting them so well. And then thank you lastly to the participants. Thanks for giving us your time today. And please feel free to connect with us on LinkedIn. We'd love to take the conversation further if there's anything that you wanted to deep dive in. So thank you very much, everyone. Have a great day.